Please welcome Vivian from the PSE.
Hello, everyone. My name is Vivian Plasencia, and I'm a software engineer in the Privacy and Scale Exploration team at the Ethereum Foundation. So the title of this presentation is Bandada, Managing Privacy Preserving Groups. Let's start. So this is the structure of the presentation. So we will start with what is Bandada, some use cases, then some functionalities. We will talk a bit about credential groups, how to interact with Bandada, how you can use Bandada, a bit about the roadmap, and also share the hacker guide for hackers. So let's start with what is Bandada. So Bandada is an infrastructure to manage privacy-preserving groups. It also provides an anti-civil mechanism by using credential groups so that you can only join a group if you meet a specific criteria. So Bandada is a public good project, so it's free and open source. You can use it, contribute to it. And Bandada is a Spanish word that means group of birds. It's the same as the English word flock. So here are some use cases for Bandada. You can build platforms for DAOs, group of people in a private organization, group with members who have contributed to a specific GitHub repository, a group of wallets holding a specific NFT, group of members with more than 500 Twitter followers, for example, or it can be different, another number, and also group of people with a specific number of transactions on a specific network. There are more use cases, and you can find project ideas in this link here. And yeah, check it out there. So this is the Bandada infrastructure. So Bandada has a dashboard app, so you can interact with the infrastructure using it. You can get some information there, create groups, and do some things there. And it also has a client app, which is like a demo app to interact with the infrastructure and to join a group and things like that. It also has an API and a group of endpoints to interact with the infrastructure and the database to save the data, and also some contracts. Right now it supports Semaphore, but the idea would be to work more on chain groups and on-chain stuff and support more protocols. And there are some JavaScript libraries, and you can see the API SDK, which is a wrapper of the API. I will talk a bit about it later. And also the credentials package, which is the one used by the credential groups. You can see all the type of credentials we support, and you can contribute to it too if you have an idea to add another credential. And there is also the hard hat package to deploy the Bandada contracts is easier, and also a utils package with some utility functions. There are some functionalities. There are more, but these are the main ones. You can create groups, update groups, one or many, remove groups, join a group using invite code, and also join a group using credentials, and add members and remove members. So right now, all these functionalities are supported by the off-chain groups, but only the create groups and add members are part of the on-chain groups. Regarding credential groups, we called providers and validators. So providers will be, we have some, we will say like Web 2 providers and Web 3 providers and custom providers. So GitHub and Twitter will be Web 2 providers. So right now blockchain is Web 3 providers, and Ethereum attestation service is a custom provider. So For example, the validators can be followers and personal stars and repository commits for GitHub. So you can create groups with more than a specific number of followers or personal stars or commits on a specific repository, and also followers on Twitter if a user follows a specific user. And also for blockchain provider, we have the balance. For example, if an account has more than specific balance or also more than specific number of transactions. And for Ethereum attestation service, you can create groups with a specific, if you meet a specific criteria regarding the attestations. So you can find more information about the credential package here in this link. So to interact with Bandada, you can use the API and also the API SDK and the dashboard. Right now, for off-chain groups, everything is supported for on-chain groups. Only you can do all these functionalities using the dashboard. So right now, the on-chain groups are just semaphore groups. You can know more about semaphore here in this link, but if you want to use on-chain groups, you can use the semaphore packages, so that should work fine. To start using Bandada, there are 3 ways you can do it. You can use the API SDK, or the Boilerplate. Here is this QR code is the Bandada documentation, and I will talk a bit about each of these. So if you want to use the API, you can go to this link here. So you will see something like this, and the list of endpoints. This is the documentation for that. You can see the list of endpoints here. You can run it here. The API is just a list of endpoints, as you can see, to interact with the Bandada infrastructure. So it is compatible with any programming language that supports REST API requests. So you can use it with any other, not just JavaScript or TypeScript. So for example, you can play around with it here. You can execute it and get data and see the groups here when you go to the API documentation. Regarding the API SDK, this is a wrapper of the API, and it is a JavaScript package that provides a list of functions to make it easier to work with the Bandada API. Here is the API SDK demo QR code. And this is a project with some of the API SDK functions. You can use it and play around with it too. It has the main functions from the API SDK. You can install the package like so, using any package manager you want, npm yarn pnpm. Here is more information in the documentation if you want to check it out. Here is an example of code for the API SDK. After installing the package, you need to create an instance of that. This instance will use the production application by default. Then if you want to create a group, for example, there are some functions that need the API key, so you will need to take it from the dashboard. There are some others, like getting groups, that you don't need the API key, but for this one, if you want to create a group, you need that. Then you have the group info, and you just call the create group function, and you create the group. Then if you want to add members, you will need you can do it with using an embed code or an API key. In this case, this function is using an API key. You just send the members and the group ID and the API key, and that should be fine. And then after that, you can also remove members using API key too. So that will be the way to do it. Just an example of code. In the demo app, there are more examples, and also in documentation, and yeah. So you can also start a project using the Boilerplate. The Boilerplate is just an anonymous feedback app. is using Semaphore, which is a protocol for anonymous interaction. It's using Semaphore for the anonymous part, but it's using Bandada for to save the group information. This is the Leaf app. You can scan the QR code and try it out. And regarding the boilerplate, you can fork it, clone it, or use it as a template to start your project if it's compatible with that. I mean, if you just want to run some functions, you don't need to use the boilerplate. You can just create your own app using the API SDK. But if you want to have this kind of functionality, it's better to use the boilerplate. The boilerplate, this is like the boilerplate infrastructure. So to have more idea of where, how is everything organized, here we have where it is the Bandada infrastructure, and then this will be the app. And then the app will create requests to the Bandada infrastructure, and the infrastructure has here the database and also the backend with the API endpoints and also the dashboard, as I said before. And the app, your app will have probably a database if you want to save other kind of information. If it's just group information, you don't need it, but you will probably need to save more information, so you will have probably a database. And then we will have a backend to talk to this database. And in the case of this app, we are using the Semaphore protocol proof package to verify the proof in the backend, and the Bandada API SDK to call the functions to add members and all these things. Regarding the frontend, we have some packages because the app, what it's doing is creating an identity, then you join a group, and then you send your anonymous feedback. And that's why we need the identity package in the front end, also the group package to manage the group part and create the proof, and the proof package to create the proof too. The proof should be always created in the front end and verified in the backend. So that's why we have the proof package both places, and the Bandada API SDK to get group information and things like that. I will talk a bit about the roadmap. So we always want to improve the user experience and developer experience. We want to add, improve the documentation, add templates, and improve the packages. We would like to integrate other protocols like POP, SUPAS, etc. If you have more ideas, please create issues or discussions and let us know. We are working on logical operators for credential groups so that you can create a group with many credentials at the same time. If you meet, and then users will join this group if they meet the criteria, and they need to meet to have all these credentials. And we will work on on-chain groups to have the same functionalities that on-chain groups have now, like invite links to join a group, credential groups, etc. And we want to build a modular architecture to support many other data structures. We are using an incremental Merkle tree now, but we would like to support others. So in this link, you can find like the entire roadmap. Here is the hacker guide. This has the main information of Bandada for hackers to build on top of it. Here is the presentation slides in case you want to check it out. It's open source, and yeah, you can check it out here. And thank you so much. You can ask questions here, and also I will be at the booth, and yeah, feel free to always ask questions. Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you. Is there any questions for Vivian? Yes.
Thank you so much for the talk. I'm a huge fan of PSC, my project/company is using some of your libraries like CKKit and so on. My question regarding Bandada would be, what are the challenges you are facing with on-chain groups?
Yeah, yes, right now Semaphore is solving on-chain groups pretty well. So Semaphore is not saving any off-chain data, so that's why if you want to save off-chain data, it's better to use Bandada directly. But for on-chain groups, Semaphore is solving that part, so we will need to think about a good way to create that part, and it's not because something specific is more like it's part of the roadmap, and we started with this off-chain part because it's not it's something that Semaphore is not solving, so we needed that part, but it's part of the roadmap. It's not like there is something we prioritized off-chain groups because Semaphore was not solving off-chain groups, and we need that part, but we will work on that later, but we will need to think about a good way to solve that because Semaphore is solving that part pretty well.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Any other questions?
Hi, maybe one question. Who is running the infrastructure for that, the API endpoints?
Yes, we are running that. It's on AWS, but we are running that. But you can run it using Docker if you want. You can just run it too if you want to use it for your project.
Hey, could you maybe explain, like maybe EAS is a good example of the credential group. So yeah, I guess how that works of like, okay, I want to create a group of like, you know, Coinbase gave on-chain ES attestations for like their users. Like I want to create a Bandada group for this EAS attestation. Like is Bandada just like fetching that from some node to like build a list of addresses basically?
Yes, everything that can be fetched from a specific place can be used as a credential group. For example, if the data is there, we just fetch it. So for example, that's why we are using GitHub and Twitter with the API. So if you need other credentials and the data to check it is out there, we can add it easily, and you can also add it, yeah.
So like you mentioned, yeah, like blockchain transactions, I think, as a credential of like, okay, I want like, I mean, maybe people would have to extend it themselves, but like any address that's like received funds from like a known Binance account or like that's ever transacted on Uniswap, you could in theory just build these group sets to like have people get access to that.
Yes, as long as the data is there, yes. For example, the transactions, we are just using ethers to check if the account has specific number of more than a specific number of transactions, and also the balance. For GitHub is a GitHub API, for Twitter the API, for EAS the tools too. So yeah, in the end, just using the data that is there. So yes.
Cool, thanks. All right, thank you very much. That was excellent.
Thank you.